morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I'm back again. I was able to take care of all my business telephonically, and I turned the phones off. So I'm doing my best in every day and every way. And as I tell my students, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to do your best, right? And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. And good to see you, number one. And number one, AI. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. All you have to do is do your best. And I want to first thank everyone who's been so generous to me on my PayPal. And you can go to PayPal, and when it asks who do you want to give money to, you type in the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. The Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And that would be a great help because my real time when I have not that much cash and it takes about $3 for me to be able to drive here and go back home. And so I don't come here unless I got a bunch of stuff to do. I have to kill many birds with one stone, which I did, And get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Also, for those who have minds that think and that are open, I invite you to come to my Griot Publishing at xratted.blogspot.com. That's where all my writings are. And, people, the canary in the coal mine pretty much is pretty interesting in that he, in a lot of ways, he has his own aesthetic and, pumping iron and shaving his body and coloring his hair. I don't really have too much hair to color. And this is already white. I don't have to color that. But it's interesting. My hair on my head, though, what little I have is brown. And, Buddha said that the color of your hair denotes how much you worry, And if you lose your hair, it denotes your genetic, where you came from, And if your beard turns white of your beard denotes experience, right? You've had a full life when you have a white beard. So, by the time you turn 70, most people, had 70 years of life. So that's a lot of even if they're just eating cheeseburgers and going to work, that's still a lot of cheeseburgers. And good morning, good evening, and welcome aboard to Dreamy Dreamland. Remember, everything I say, don't believe. Nothing is true. And I quote Rudy Giuliani. It's all fake news, right? And at least I'm a griot, so I'm telling you a story, right? And the understanding of these stories are in your heart. So anyone who is living in a when I say you are not racist, when I say you are what's the word? Prejudice. That doesn't mean you're racist. It just means that you believe in one thing and that's it. And that's all you're going, nothing else, you're in a silo. So, I said I was going to come back at 1 o'clock, but that's when I thought I had to drive another 50 miles in another direction and be in that town, but I don't have to, so I'm just going to go home and garden. And so, but I thought since I'm here, I have access to the internet, I thought I'd kind of tell you about my dreams, especially the seemingly prophetic ones. So I told you about, I woke up and saw myself in the mirror and I was black. Oh my God, I'm black. How can I be black? Oh my God, I have to worry about police. I am a black man. We pretty much, everyone is from Africa. And we've all, you know, experienced that. Skin color is just a matter of melanin. So I'm a African American that's melanin challenged. Right? I grew up in Harlem. I spent most of my as an Aborigines social worker. I've basically been with poor people, in New York City, in Texas, and in Mexico, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, West Virginia, Kentucky. Even though I can go up to the most richest, powerful person and say, "Hey, how you doing?" and I can have a conversation with that person, even though I'm wearing, Christmas pants and a pink T-shirt, they will listen to what I say and go, "You're a smart guy. I mean, I need to listen to more of you." So that's why wherever I go, I have access to anything and everyone because of the poor holler folk I live with. They know I don't judge them. They know that I'm there and I share whatever I have with them, and they appreciate that, right? And I help them in any way I can, and so that's why they help me. I had a tree pulled down in my yard, and it didn't bother me, but because my next door neighbor has to drive across my front yard to get to his place or show it. Basically, oh, I thought I turned this thing off. I did, and it's still buzzing. It's like so. Anyway, and I said, you have to drive over that tree, so why don't you, And so I'll get somebody, and that was Christmas Eve, and he didn't touch it. So my neighbor who came to visit me just took the chainsaw out of his back of his truck and cut it up and threw it out of the way. So because the people who were looking at or trying to find this other guy would kind of freak out and try to back up out of the holler, which is like no, and I would say and I'd let them try and do it, but if they were going to end up in my drainage ditch, I'd come out, hey, just drive forward, go over that tree, it's no big deal. You got a big truck, you can do it. And that's the thing. No one wants to try anything. No one wants to experience. And I keep saying, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try your best. And if you do that, your life will work out. If you have expectations of being rich, famous, any of those kind of status symbols, it's a waste of time. I've been all those things. It's a waste of time. Back in the days. Oh, let's see. I got something to show you. I have a box here of photographs of when I lived in Australia. And I have a few others of Floyd Fest. If you've ever heard of Floyd Fest. Now, when I went to Australia, I went with my first wife, my training wife, Donna Ann, and we had a photo studio called DNA, Donna and Al, right? And I was a photojournalist, and I had a pretty good rep. Right. And she was Andy Leibowitz's first assistant and Rolling Stone's darkroom chief. So she had a pretty good group. So together we made a pretty interesting studio. But at a certain point, she wanted to be, she goes, Al, you do all this other stuff. You're a painter, you're a theater guy, you do all this other stuff. Let us, disband the photo studio and I'll just be the photo. And I said, Don, I document everything. So she goes, well, you got this thing with Polaroid, so just do Polaroids, and you can use a Diana camera, right? And so all the majority of the pictures of Australia she got, because she was taking pictures like machine gun. Me and I'm more, Cartier Bresson, wait for the moment. And my father, I built my parents a house, a really beautiful house. One day when I dig up the photos of it, I'll show you. I had a real estate bit. My dad, when he, summarily dissolved his business with my brothers and sisters, which they basically forced him out. Um, he came, and I had nothing to do with my family for a good 32 years, and you have to take care of us now. And I said, no, I don't. I don't work for you. I have real monetary. I'm not like my brothers and sisters who depended financially on you taking care of them by them working for you. So no, not doing it. So anyway, I finally broke down and took care of them, and I thought they'd be dead. They were in their mid-70s when they did that, and I thought they'd be gone relatively soon. Well, they lived another 28 years. So as we did that, my dad he goes, you always come up with these great real estate ideas, and I always shoot you down. Well, why don't we do some of that? Which I did, and we had an amazingly prosperous business. Within less than 2 years, we had rehabbed about 5 buildings. We had a really big rent roll. I had, out there in Eastern Long Island, there were all these buildings. Were like Massachusetts, because it was just across Long Island Sound to Massachusetts. So pretty much everyone on the north side of Long Island out east were from Massachusetts. And so had all these farms and barns and things like from the Revolutionary time and Civil War time. And at Stony Brook, I had a girlfriend who was a historian, and she could tell you about the nails and everything. And she came to me and she said, there's this guy who is burning all these buildings down because he's a pyro, and he can because they're out in the middle of fields and no one watches them, but they're historic relics. So she got a grant, and we went and got those buildings, took them apart, and my real estate company, we got 100 acres, and we were rebuilding, taking the old wood and rebuilding, and she would take pictures, and she had CAD CAM, and so we would build a brand new building with all the old wood, so it looked like the old building, but it was like had a foundation and wiring and plumbing and good roofs and all of that. And so we did 2 or 3 houses, and I did one of these houses for my dad because he had a piece of property that had a house from Revolutionary times. We rehabbed that, and then we built him this house. And I knew my father, so I knew that at a certain point he couldn't handle, because I was running the whole business, and this was not his business. He had no idea what real estate was, how to build things, none of the above. So even though we were making a ton of money, he dissolved the business within 2.5 years. Now, I knew he was going to do that. So when I built this house for him, I had decided that I was going to go back to Ireland, and I had, you're my 50-50 partner. So when we dissolved the business and he sold the resources, he took all the money, and he said, I paid you salary, $400 a week. And, I live very frugally, so I had saved money, I invested on my own. And so I liquidated that and went to Australia for 2 years. Anyway, I built a hidden closet in that house, meaning, you couldn't find it. It had a secret way to get in. And I thought, so I had boxes and boxes, just like this cardboard box here, but big ones, that had photographs and books of negatives and books of photographs. And I see, Al's photographs, important, don't throw out, right? So 3 years later, when I came back, I came to visit my folks because they were going to sell that house. So I wanted to move that stuff out of there. And I went into my secret closet, and everything was gone. And I said, Dad, what happened to my stuff? He goes, I threw it out. Now, our lawyer, when he was there because he was getting some stuff signed by my dad, and he said, if that happened to me, I would kill him. But, you're better than I. So I just said, whatever. So I had enough pictures. So here we go. This is Australia. This is Melbourne, Australia. So there is Donna with the long ponytail, and there is her doppelganger, right here, Leslie, and my friend Neil, who was the comic political artist he was like the Gary Trudeau of Australia. And so Leslie right here and Donna were born. They're both cancers, born on the same day, born 5 minutes apart. Don was born in Long Island, and Leslie was born in Melbourne, Australia. And so take a good look at Leslie. She's always a little aggro. And she really loved me. Anybody, any male, but who she really loved was Don. And there's Don, right? And here we are in their house in Melbourne, and that's Leslie's mom. And Leslie comes from Greek heritage. And here's a meal I made for them, a vegetable meal from the vegetables from our garden. Here is me at an art opening, and there's a painting I had made. It was kind of a collage painting. Things I painted and then cut them out and then put them together on a canvas and then painted over them. And that kind of, at least at that period, there's me. There's me at 35. Look like a pretty young 35-year-old. Anyway, here is some art folk of Melbourne. Here's there was a political rally that we had a permit to do, and I went to go get the speaker, Jimmy Bontrey. He was a Aboriginal land rights guy, and I went to get him, and we were running a little late, and when we got back, the cops came in and beat the crap out of everyone, and it looked like a war zone, and there was blood over this wall, so they painted it white, and so I dripped red paint. I got a ladder and got a pie and dripped it. There were more drips than that, but that's the one I got on this photo. And so I was a pretty active artist guy there. Here is in Perth going out to the port. And here's inside. So I work for an electrical engineer, right? He's a friend of, when we landed in Australia, Pan Am lost all our stuff. There's an international law where they're supposed to, if you have the receipts and photos and evidence of what they lost, they have to pay you. But Pan Am said, screw you, go back to New York. And you'll have to buy an airplane ticket. So Neil got me a job with a friend, a guy he knew. Everyone knew Neil. And so this was a big electrical engineering firm that did dams and factories and hospitals and all kinds of stuff. And so I went to work for them, and the owner, the guy, friend Neil, said, yeah, you really do need your stuff. But, buddy, look at everyone. All the engineers, black pants, white shirt, little skinny black tie, their slide rule on their hip. And what do you come in? You're wearing a dress, and you got a pocketbook, and you got an umbrella and flip-flops. I mean, you just don't look like an engineer, but you're better than any of those guys. But you're driving them nuts. And I have more of them than you. So I got a great idea. One of our biggest problems is to get our clients to pay us that last check. And when you do a big hospital or a dam or something, that last check is like in the millions of dollars. And these guys try to stiff them every way they can. So he used me as the clipboard, checklist guy that they would send me there if the job was all done, and I would go through it, and we'd go over to the thing. Said, well, you didn't do this, you didn't. That's why we're not paying that last check. Well, I would be there, and I said, fine, good. Okay, I'm going to just go get in the car and get my tools, and I'll be here for the next couple of weeks fixing all that. And they would just, go through conniptions because I'd be wearing a dress or, whatever I was wearing. I did not fit their protocol. And so they would go, okay, here, we'll sign it. I'd have to clip it, just sign bottom of that and I'll be gone. And I would get like 0.02% of that. And of a check over $100,000, that was a pretty, when it was like $1 million, I would get, there was a cap. But he would give me, whether I had a job or not, $5,000 a month. So when I was in Australia, I was doing pretty good. Plus, at the same time, I was working for the Avant-Garde Theatre of Australia. And I was working, doing in Melbourne. That was like their Broadway. And until I really pissed off one of the number one producer in Melbourne. But that's when I got a gig working for the Avant-Garde Theatre of Australia. And then they found out that I was an anthropologist, and they sent me off to live with the Aborigines for a year, me and Don. So here's a friend of mine's, Vicious. These, dogs that are Dalmatians, they were bred to be nasty because they like horses better than humans. And they would run in front of the coaches of the dukes and duchess and bite and snap at the peons who wouldn't get out of the way. So this guy, he was really a nasty dog, but he liked me because I'm a dog boy. So usually if he got this close to somebody, he would bite their face off, but he would just lick me. And here's his owner's car. That's a very Australian Humvee. And here's Neil's grandfather, who fought in World War II. Here's Neil's mom, and Donna Ann, and Neil's sister. We're at their house. And here we are in the kitchen of Neil's mom's house. Here is they had cable TV, and the government, just like ours, kind of said you have to have public access, but the cable company didn't want to bother, so I kind of threatened to sue them with the Australian Artists Guild behind me, and so they let us do one show a week about art and culture. And I would have the show run for like 23 hours. Here's me. I was a little, had an altered state, and so I started drawing on my, some of the the things I saw that weren't there. Here is Jimmy, but you can't really, he's so black you can't tell that he's there. He's we're sitting we were like in a luncheonette, and they were very upset that he was there. He's a black man in a luncheonette. They didn't like that. So, and here's a picture of the three. So there is Don in the middle, and this is Yvonne, her best friend from San Francisco, and she's English. And there's Leslie. She's Australian but Greek. And this is we're in New York City, and those girls came and lived with us for about a little less than a year in our loft in Williamsburg. And this is when Donna was trying out being, lesbian. And what was interesting, these girls thought I was one of the girls. So I had every man's dream, So, and I really, those girls were like my other wives, So here's a warehouse that was in Melbourne that homeless people were sleeping in. And I basically took it over and used some homestead laws that they had and made it a place so the cops couldn't rouse them out, right? And then I turned it into, there's all kinds of interesting it was a warehouse, so there's all kinds of interesting stuff. So I first turned it into a nightclub. There's the Mirrored Ball. And here is an American in Australia, and he's got his Indiana T-shirt on. And again, this is the warehouse that we really turned interesting salon, disco, homeless shelter, art gallery. Here I am, just again, little altered states, because our next door neighbor was this old lady who grew things that would alter your state, and she was such a green thumb. She had these cannabis plants that she would just click off the buds and let the plant grow bigger and bigger, and then she would cut them up like topiary. And here is one of the homeless women. And so the shelter, in Australia and in the United States, I was involved in one of the first women's shelters in New York. I think it was the first, because women weren't supposed to, be homeless. And so they would be doubly taken advantage of. And so this woman this is again in Melbourne, and we had a whole section of that warehouse that was just for women. That guys, period, couldn't go in. I was the only guy who could go in there, because I was a counselor. So here's not a very well exposed Polaroid. These are SX70s. They don't make these things anymore. This is a picture driving at night into Perth. Right? And here is, we're heading out into Queensland, into the Nookambah. Back with Leslie and Donna and Neil's mom. Here's some art from the art show. And so this building, this warehouse in Melbourne, was pretty interesting because it became, I had one of my dumpster restaurants there. I fed everybody, poor, rich, and it became well known for great food, great parties. And here is one of the rich people. And she kind of strolled into the women's shelter, right? And made fun that, and she's like a well-to-do person. And there is a homeless person in the back who's like going, who the heck is this? And so I just kept taking pictures until the lady kind of got the idea. Here's a Australian artist handing me some of the old lady's bud. Again, the Nookambah, and that's kind of it. That's how the outback looks as the sun is rising or the sun is setting. Here is some of Neil's cartoon artwork. And so he got me back into painting and drawing and such. And he was quite the political. He got sued by the government because he was making fun of the government, and they have laws about that in Australia. And so he couldn't make, his livelihood was a political cartoonist, so he couldn't do it. So he then started doing a cartoon called How to Draw Owl. And all of the characters were Aboriginal and Australian animals and spirit guides, and I was the only human. So I was like traveling amongst all these spirit guides, and they would be having the political disruptions that Australia was going through. I was there for 3 years, and they had martial law twice. So everyone thinks Australia is a lot like America, and they had, in 3 years, martial law twice. And so there's another homeless artist kid. And the bad thing, they had a lot of issues with heroin and a lot of overdoses. And when we started this place, not a single person OD'd there. And the ODs in Melbourne went down like by 20% because we were feeding people. And so here is one of my gobos. And a gobo is a piece of metal that withstands heat pretty well, and you cut it out, and then you put it in front of a real intense light source, and it projects that image. And so I would, have these gobos, and there was this kid who could shimmy up anything, and he would climb up the streetlight and slip these gobos into the lens of the streetlight, and it would take out the streetlight and have these projections coming down onto the street. Here's back in New York, and here's Don, and here is the infamous Olga Kluver, and I'll tell you stories about Olga. And here is an old sweetie of mine, and all my sweeties always became best friends with each other. They never and they'd always tell stories about me. And so this girl was a lawyer from North Carolina. She went to Chapel Hill, and I met her. She was my sweetie in Chapel Hill, and that was like years ago, like in the 80s, right? Or not even the 60s. This is 1979, I think, or 80. No, this might be 81. And Olga, guess how old Olga is in this picture, right? How old do you think that lady is, right? And what's interesting, all these ladies were, Donna was about 5'6", Olga was about 5'2", and Jay was, I don't know, 5'7", 8", right? So, and I think they bonded in their height because they were, of great, all three of these ladies were of great stature. This is back in Australia. Mom and one of the homeless guys had puppies, right? He didn't have puppies, but his dog had puppies and had like 10 of them. And they were the cutest little things you ever wanted to see. And he was an Alsatian and a white lab and a few other things. And that's what the puppies look like. And so this girl was a dog. Anybody who was a dog person, we said you could have, once the puppies were weaned. And so there's a mom and her little daughter, Women's Shelter, Melbourne, Australia, 1977, 78. Back to New York. Here is a collab meeting, and we are turning out our newsletter. We'd all get together, have dinner. We each would Xerox X amount of copies of this page, and we'd collate them, and that was, and so there we are making our collab zine. We were one of the first zine people. And here's a good, Neil would just doodle on T-shirts. And this is just one of his doodles. And he and I loved aircraft and military stuff, right? And so here's his collection of little play animals. And here is that warehouse, and it had a ton of bricks, right? So I took those bricks and I made art out of them. And here is, we're at the end of the runway, so it was a little bit noisy. And here is one of those homeless guys who got into sewing, and he became a performance artist and became pretty famous, So this is what you can do. I mean, we had no money. We had no real funding. We just took over this abandoned building because it had been abandoned, and we had turned it into something amazing. And it got so much positive press that, the Art Council of Australia, actually, like the NEA, funded it. We turned it into a nonprofit. And so it kind of funded, 150 homeless people and gave them an avenue out of that, And like I said, this guy actually became pretty world famous, traveled the world with his performance art, So this is what I turned those bricks into. And I made them look like gold bars. I mean, everyone thought they were gold. And this isn't even gold leaf. This is just gold paint that I found in the warehouse, and I mixed a few things into it to make it look really goldy. And these bricks were like lead. So they, felt like they were lead, gold bars. And I did this one performance piece that I said, okay, if you can carry two of these out, you can have them. And people were like, oh my God, that's like $1 million worth of gold. And, they kind of carried, and then they got them home and found out they, the gold paint was stuck to their hand and their clothes. And only the rich people took the gold. The poor people knew that no fool would be giving away gold bars, right? So only the rich people. And this was a paper. I mean, they had so much amazing stuff in this warehouse. Here's some more of my goldness that I made sculpture out of. And here are the Nazis. Here are these two. I mean, they were straight up Nazis, and they loved Donna, and they gave her a ton of Leica cameras. Like they were missing their daughter. Here's the picture of the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, which Robert Moses was the most racist guy there was, and he cut, from Queens, he cut all the way through Queens and Brooklyn and Harlem and destroyed black neighborhoods. Right? I mean, he ran that highway through the most vibrant, financial, successful neighborhoods, and you'll find that across the United States in places like Asheville, North Carolina, and Roanoke, Virginia, virtually any city. And Robert Moses, he built this thing called Jones Beach, which were these big beaches along Long Island, just in Nassau County, just above Queens. So so they had buses, the MTA buses would take people, not buses, you could drive your car to the beach. You only had mammoth parking lots. And the bridges of the highway were not square. Most interstates, it's square. So they, trucks, buses can get underneath these bridges. He made them curved. So the buses could not, he didn't want black people to go to the beach. So the only people who could go to the beach is you had your car. And you couldn't have more than 4 people in the car because you had to pay for the parking. And so if you had, you came there, let's say you had 6 kids. So, his mom and dad and 6 kids, that's 8. So there's 4 extra. If you were white, it only cost 50 cents a kid. If you were black, it cost $2 extra. Here is kind of out in the Nookumba, not quite, still this is not that far out of Queens, out of Sydney, right? This is kind of a farm. And there's Neil. There's my buddy Neil. There he is. And there's my sweetie Donna. There's his mom. There's his dad, who looks just like Grandpa, but not, quite as old. Here's the killer dog. Here's the killer dog's owner, the male owner, and that dog would bite him all the time because he wasn't a dog boy. And here is that dog's mom, and there's Neil. We're at Neil's house, Neil and Leslie's house. And again, Neil and Leslie's house. And this is one of my black artist friends from New York. And we're at an art show of their work. And this is an artist, and this is, how he's responding to the black guy. Here's another buddy of mine from New York, a jazz musician. And so he had a gig in Melbourne. And he brought his artist friend and a poet friend. And I knew these guys from New York. And they came, and it was unbelievable how much static, these people got. They're treated like criminals. Here's me, again, about 37. Here's that guy. And here is Punch Hawks. She's just keeping herself from saying something at this art show about how people are treating my black friends. And here is another friend of mine that looks a lot like Punch, but she was a photographer buddy of mine. And people would always, and everyone I pretty much know in Australia has died of cancer because of the unbelievable, another Australian lad. He was trying to become, the main artist dude, because in Australia, one man rules the world. Here is where all that paint in that warehouse was. And here we are at that show, and this is an Aboriginal girl with one of my black friends, and she is also Spanish and Greek. And again, people just ostracize them like you couldn't believe. So anyway, I got a few more photos, but that's just a thumbnail of art and life in Australia. Got me on your lunch. Okay. So, I've been talking about dreams, and I've been having real prophetic dreams. And one of the, so I dreamt of myself as black and looking like Marcus Garvey and wearing the suit of Marcus Garvey, but hanging out from Palm Sunday to Easter back in the day with Jesus, right? And the other dream I had was, and I've been having this dream over and over again, and that is that in 2021, there's going to be in India, Moby went on TV and he said on a Friday evening at 8 p.m., okay, Saturday at 10 a.m., when all the banks are closed, if you don't have money in the bank, it is going to be because we're going totally to electronic money from here on in. And that was an unbelievable disruptor. And but it put him in a stronger power, right? And that was about 3 years ago. Go look that up. India turns to electronic money, right? China has it to the point where you don't, your face is your social identification. They don't even need your phone anymore. But they, take everything like. So what's going to happen is the internet is going to Friday evening go off across the world, and there'll be no more internet. Period. So the financial, your social media will all go away, and everyone will freak out over that weekend. Saturday, Sunday, there will be, it'll be a mess. That's all I can say. And then Monday, basically, Mr. Google, Mr. Facebook, Mr. Microsoft, Elon Musk, and Mr. Jeffy Bezos are going to go on into the media and say, listen, we have this new thing. Elon has put up these 50,000 satellites, and we're going to give everyone on Earth their own Elon Musk smartphone that all, Apple's going to be on, it'll be Apple will be the Apple Store, and that Elon Musk phone will be an Apple phone, an iPhone, but it'll go straight up to Elon's satellites. And all money now will be, Jeffy Bezos bucks, and it'll be electronic. And, the only way you'll get anything is one of those phones. We're going to give everyone one, but you will have to put your thumb in this little hole for it to work. and it'll do more than just take your thumbprint. It will read every biological thing that's in you, what diseases you have, what medications you're on, and we'll have a whole thing of what the do's and don'ts you can or cannot do in the social dynamic. So before that happens, I'd really love it if you could go to PayPal and, and say, hey, I want to give something. And they'll say, what's the address? And you will say, the dude awake 42 at Gmail, the dude awake at 42 at Gmail. I normally don't do things like that, but I could really use some capital because I'm down to fumes in this car. I got to drive another. I'm glad I don't have to drive all the way to the other side of the county to go to this place. I could take care of everything already. So anyway, if you can, I would really love it. And for all those, hey, Janie Pooh, and who's the other? Again, if you guys could, Tool. Uh, and the pandemic, I hate to say this, but it ain't going away anytime soon. And again, don't believe anything I say, gang. These are dreams. This ain't reality. But, dreams lead to causality of not the same exact thing, but close to it, maybe. So all I can say is 21 is going to, I mean, look, 6 days into 2021, and what happened on the sixth day, right? And we're having, it's just going to, and now that it's warm and people are more out and about, there's going to be lots of stuff, right? So I had this dream where basically everyone was turning into a robot. And those who were, not doing that, and that became pretty obvious, you weren't really punished. You were more or less kind of put into a gilded cage where people could look at you, that the Truman Show, it was kind of like that. And, but none of this lasted too long because this is the desperate last gasp of the hidden hand to try and hold on to their control. And it's not going to work out. Sorry to tell you this, hidden hand, but it's going to work out for the best because it always frigging does. Meaning, why did I, go from what I did for 46 years and then I said, okay, someone offered me a position, in the corporate world. And it gave me a lot of latitude, a lot of freedom, a lot of access to a lot of stuff I wanted to investigate. And that was fine. But I hung out with corporate guys and we would go and have 20,000 calorie lunches, Now, if I eat 20,000 calories in a month, that's a lot, And that's how I gained 240 pounds in less than 8 years. And that's why I died in 1914, in 2014. I think I might have died in 1914 too. So I'm going to next time I come on, which will be sometime in the next 3 or 4 days, especially if I get a little PayPal cash so I can put in my gas tank here. I will do another show, and I will have, I won't be as on the bop because I went off and did about 10 different things here. And then people called me and I had to figure out other things. And, so I just wanted to touch base with you and tell you that I love you. And I, want to encourage everyone to meditate, and that is to quietly go to a space and breathe. So we're going to breathe now, okay? So. And I would suggest to do this before you go to sleep and tell yourself, I'm going to remember my dreams. I would also suggest you go back and look at my earlier shows. And I think everything is up there. I just can't see it all because I've stumbled on other shows that are like, 2 years old. And when I lived at the school and I had access to the internet that I helped John have, John used to have to pay $200 to have a hotspot off his cell phone to do things off the computer. When John was away on one of his hard journeys to see his children in Texas, and he kind of got a little distracted. Um, he This guy wanted to move in. He really had to move in, and I had a big doctor's bill, so I said, "Sure, just give me, your rent is going to be this, and just give me that, and you can move in right away." So he did, and when John showed up 2 weeks later, this guy was there. And John was like, "What is he doing?" And I said, "John, you wanted to rent this floor out. I cleaned it up. I rented to this guy. He's really a great tenant. He put in hot water downstairs. He put in a wood stove, and that was just in 2 weeks. And John said, "Well," and then the guy said, "Listen, Al said it's going to be this month, but I'll pay you $1,800 a month." And he goes, "And I have the cash." And this is before Johnny's mom and dad were bankrolling him. I mean, they were, but not like they are now. And so, because he had sold one of his houses, and he, said, "Ooh, $1,800, sure." And you just stay downstairs, right? You won't bother me. And I said, "Yep." Mhm. And so, guy was there a month, and John would sit at the top of the stairs and listen because the guy kind of ran his business from downstairs, and to run his business, he needed good internet, and he was an internet. That was his business, the internet. So he basically put microwave antenna and beamed. He had servers. He had beamed the internet up to that house to John. So John had a better pipeline to the internet than Comcast did. And I mean, his bandwidth is unbelievable. And the guy needed that for his business there because he was running a lot of things, and he had all these servers downtown. And so John would sit on top of the stairs and listen to this guy run his business. And when John heard him say anything that was, like, he would come down, "You're such a big guy. Get out, get out." And the guy goes, "Sorry, John, I paid you X amount of dollars and I want to, you just can't throw me out today. I have all this, my stuff here and everything. We're going to have to negotiate and da-da-da-da." And so John would hop upstairs, and then I would go talk to John. And I said, "John, look how much he's paying you rent." "Yeah, okay. And I said, "John, stop drinking coffee." Anyway, he did that enough to the guy realized that this was not going to be worthwhile. So I found another place, a better place for that guy to go that was never have to worry about John screaming at him, and it was like his own, and he loves it now. And that's how I kind of eased him in, right? And by getting that guy to be be John's tenant for about 3 months, John has the best internet on the planet, has a wood stove that heats the whole school, like 10 logs a day heats the whole school. But John can't even start a fire in a wood stove. And he put hot water downstairs. He did a whole bunch of other things. And John never paid him for it. John never said thank you. And this guy is still, I mean, he could unplug John's internet like that, and that would be it. John would be off the thing. And when our road washed out, 2 years ago, when I wasn't living there, but I knew what was going on, I found the guy who initially cut the road for Inga and George. And he came back and he fixed the road amazingly, and it's still in pretty good shape. And everyone who lived on that road kicked in some money, except for John. John's the only one who didn't put any money in. I don't want to say he's cheap, but he sees everything as transactional. And if he doesn't have to pay for it, he doesn't. Just like the cell. I mean, his internet. He was paying $200 a month because he had to, But when this guy was generous enough to put it up there, now he doesn't need it up there. He could go up, take that antenna with him, take it back home, and John would have to go back to paying $200 a month for his internet. But now he has internet that is like, so I know he's, doing things that most people can't do. I would bet you that he probably has 100, Gmail accounts, and that he has them botted up to send Yahoo, at least 100 people watching his show, right? That he does himself, and has the bots write in, glowing reports that they're buying stuff because of, you know what I'm saying. So John has that capability. He is really smart when it comes to the internet, and he has all of that. Me, I have to drive, 40 miles to do a show that can often be extremely limited. And I can't even read what you guys are saying there. I see it's you, Janie, and I see it's Tool, and I bless you and thank you, and everyone else who has watched. And remember to breathe, remember to pray. Remember, you don't have to be perfect, just do your best. And the love you receive twice the love than the love that you give. Go play that Beatles song, right? I listen to, Jesus has a few words about that too. Okay, so I'm out of here. Ow out.